Welcome back to
Ask the Expert!
Just kidding. All right, so we have Benny Liu, who is the founder and CEO of Next Shark, which is a leading publication for Asian American news and stuff.
And you know what? For JK News, we actually use a lot of their articles, and for many years.
Yeah,
so through their articles, you know what? That's how you know them. through their articles. That's how you know them.
So thanks for being here, Benny.
Thank you for having me, guys. So happy to be here. Seriously.
You know what's cool about like a Benny's? Like so back in the day before you were around, and it was just like us four, maybe one other person or two, I don't know. We were just Kidding Films back then, and they had a publication called The Other Asians.
Oh.
And that was just all about showcasing like different Asian talent, because back then Hollywood was like, fuck y'all, you got small numbers, nobody wants to watch your shit. And then Benny was like, oh, we gotta get a website and showcase all these Asians, because like everybody's talented and doing shit, but like no one's really giving them a place for their voice and stuff outside of YouTube. So then they came and took pictures, interviewed us, and there'll be like blogs on different kinds of artists, musicians, dancers, and I was like, yo, that's so sick, man. And
I think I was in it too, and I was like, uh-oh, I'm not Asian.
You're honorary Asian.
That's before the world knew.
And then you guys made new media rock stars.
We did.
And that was really cool.
Actually, before then, that interview we did with you guys for The Other Asians, that was pretty pivotal for us, because like you guys were just making that decision to go all in on JK News. I remember you talked about how like you were asking your mom to help like support you for a section of time because this is what you wanted to do. I also remember I used her quote a lot. Actually, you said something that I still remember to this day, and it was something along the lines of, "This is like the most broke I've ever felt, but has also been the most like gratifying, ever." So like, that's like
Cool.
been stuck with me even to this day.
Yay! Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and it relates to kind of the work that I do now. I mean, like, and every time I think about the work that I do and whether this is worth it, I keep thinking about those words too. And
You
that's
think about me a lot. Thank you, Benny.
in that context.
How did you even get into doing like publications and wanting to like create like an online like newspaper or journal type of thing?
It's interesting because like it's funny when people ask me that, because they would think that I'm this like really crazy professional writer or something. But the reality is like I was never that good of a writer. I mean, I think back in college I always struggled in my writing classes. My teachers would be like, hey, you got to get extra help, and I think that I still tested at like a high school writing level.
Did you type like this?
No, my typing was good though.
You type like this.
No, it's just like basic grammar issues and stuff like that. Like it was tough. And even in school I struggled a lot in all my writing classes from middle school to high school and what have you. And so to have like 2-3 publications now, like it's definitely like very interesting. And I think my past writing teachers would be like, what? Seriously?
So
I can
cool.
see why you kind of went that route, because when I first met you, you're such an inquisitive, like very curious person. I remember you just asking a bunch of questions because you were genuinely intrigued by whatever it is that was like in front of you.
Yeah, no, I think that I'm definitely an observer. I mean, I think growing up, I wouldn't say that I was like an outcast, but I was just really like, I was really quiet. I kind of kept to myself, and so I observed a lot. And for me, I'm naturally just a very curious person. I like to see things at a bird's eye view of what's happening into the world. I like to look at things from different perspectives and everything. And I think that I think a lot. Let's put it that way, more than I should have.
No, I mean, that's great. It's to your benefit, right?
Yeah.
So I have some questions here from our fans who are really curious to get to know you better. And so the first question here is, when you started Next Shark, did you think it would create this big of an impact as it has on the Asian community?
No, not at all. And the funny thing is, I get asked about this all the time, about like the genesis of Next Shark. And the reality is, Next Shark didn't start off as an online publication targeting Asian Americans. I had just sold my first company.
It was about fish in the sea, right?
No, exactly.
I thought it was about young entrepreneurs.
It was about young entrepreneurs, and so
About marine animals?
I know, right? It's like, what is this? This is like an aquatic show.
I was waiting for that hammerhead shark to come out, but it never did.
That Next Shark,
Yeah, so I was trying to figure out what to do next after I sold my first company, New Media Rockstars, as you guys were talking about. And you know, I was just looking into what to do next, and naturally I was seeing this like rise in, you know, a lot of young entrepreneurs trying to, you know, do their own side hustle, start companies and everything. And I really wanted to kind of create a publication to kind of spoke out to that new generation of.
What year was this?
This was like 2013. Right around there. Yeah, so, you know, we did it for a while, and I landed some great interviews. I landed, you know, one of my favorite interviews was one of the co-founders of Apple. So like,
Oh shit! Like
Yeah,
Steve Wozniak?
Okay, so Apple actually has 3 co-founders. It was like Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and a guy named Ron Wayne.
Oh yeah, that guy.
The one that nobody knows.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
because he pulled out soon earlier or something, right?
yeah, so what happened was like
This story's hilarious.
yeah, he walked into a room and then both Steves were having like a philosophical argument, and then so Ron was older at the time and ended up, you know, solving the issue, and then Steve turned around and was like, okay, so we're gonna start a company called Apple. You know, both me and Steve are gonna have equal partnership. We would like to give you, you know, equity to be our tiebreaker if there's any disagreements between us. And so he said yes. 2 weeks later, he sold 10% of his shares for $800.
Nice.
Yeah, and so, you know.
Wait, not even 800 grand, $800?
$800 at that time, and so, you know, you know, for him, like, he had different reasons. I mean, I can't really speak for him because, you know, I think that for him, it was kind of a new project. He had already, you know.
He's like, these guys are so annoying, it's not worth my time. Like, I don't give a fuck, and I don't want to deal with this shit. These guys are
Give me my
crazy.
$800
Yeah.
out.
Dude, and I remember driving, dude. Me and you know, a couple of our colleagues, Melly, some of our, you know, our close friends. We drove up there. We interviewed this guy. We drove all the way to Pahrump, which is like middle of nowhere.
In Nevada? Pahrump?
Yeah, we drove to Pahrump,
He
Nevada.
actually lives in Pahrump.
He lives.
Oh, he loves hookers, huh?
How do you know? Yeah, how do you know the city?
Because that's all they got is like hookers and like a few bars.
He is an LGBTQ, and he was actually, if I remember, like one of the first like people to come out to Steve Jobs at the time. And so I remember, yeah, and you know, it was interesting, but really cool guy. I mean, I felt kind of bad for him a little bit. Nice guy. Like he lives in a mobile home, and
Oh,
you know,
no.
yeah. So like, dude, this
Does he have
guy's-
an iPhone or is it Android?
I have no idea actually. That's a good question though. No, but I
Like,
remember going to
fuck
his
these
house.
fools. Got a Samsung.
Yeah, you know, I just remember going to his house and stuff, and you know, and he still had the CRT monitors and everything. It felt like I was stepping back through time. Like, you know, I think the bathroom had like back then, you know, in the 50s or the 60s, like carpets in the bathroom and stuff like that.
Oh,
Right.
disgusting.
Isn't that crazy? Is that
Crazy.
what kind of FOMO, or like not even FOMO, it's like regret, or like you got to deal with so much. It's like something you could have had.
I look at this guy and I'm just like, you know, wow, like okay, sold 10% of Apple stock for $800, which
How much would it be worth now?
like billions. I think it was like the figure was like 50 billion to 75 billion, and on top of that, it was like a triple whammy for them. Like, you know, another one was that, you know, he had the original contract between the 3 Steves signed, and I think he sold it. For,
Bro, this guy makes all sorts of wrong decisions.
well, this is what he says. He says like I you know, define my life as, you know, basically either a day late or a dollar short. That's just how he defines.
Or a
his
human
whole-
punching bag?
I feel so bad for him, man.
So you're
Seriously.
saying he was the first guy that you ended up interviewing for?
First like big interview, like one of my favorite interviews, just because like just to see this guy like go through so much, you know, like having like, you know, making maybe not so good decisions, or however you want to say it, depending on how you want to look at it, you know, selling his Apple stock and then ending up selling his, I think he sold his the original document for $700. That same document got sold, I think, about a few years ago for like 1.7 million.
Oh my god, this guy, I feel so bad.
Crazy. This was a movie, a biopic. This would be a crazy, like, I would watch this just to see what is the psychology behind this. What is the psychology behind all those moves?
I'm looking at him going, dude, you must like have anger coming up. No, he's just like, you know what, like it is what it is, and you know, I've gone through enough already, and you know, I will handle it. And I'm like, wow, like you got, I don't know what it is you got, but you know, you got some mad patience, man.
This guy makes me feel good about my life.
But it kind of tells you what kind of people Steve Jobs and Wozniak is. Because like if I had a partner, right, and I see him living in a trailer park, I'm like, yo, man, fix yourself up. Here's like $500,000. Just do it. And I think that maybe that's why they're so mega successful, is because they're not as emotional. They're just like, well, that was the agreement. Tough to be you.
You know what? That's interesting, because like I remember I need to go back to the interview, but I feel like I remember that when I asked him, hey, do you feel like you have to be as ruthless as like, you know, someone like a Steve Jobs or something back then in order to really succeed? And I think that, you know, his answer was like something along the lines of yes. you know, and that was like, I mean, it's not really my style of how I run my company.
Yeah, me neither. That's why I'm not successful.
I know, we care too much about people.
Yeah.
Bro, look at fucking Bezos that fucking unloaded his own stock. Like, that's fucking wild.
Wild, man.
Yeah.
To fuck the market and buy it.
Exactly.
Buy it back.
Yeah, just buy the whole thing back, you know.
Damn.
So maybe he's onto something.
Maybe, you know, I mean, I have too much of a conscience, you know, like I think about people too much.
Yeah.
All right, so I have another question for you. It says, as a high school senior, did you know if you wanted to go to college and study, or did you already know what you wanted to do? And when you did find out what you wanted to do and how did you end up attacking it?
Yeah. So, okay, I think that I didn't answer the last question properly. I think that you guys wanted to know where that transition happened to Asian content.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it started off as you know, a site for you know, young entrepreneurs or people interested in entrepreneurship, and we landed some great interviews. But I mean, about 2 years in, we were getting some good readership, like maybe like 1 to 2 million readers a month, which wasn't bad, and we were.
Sounds like a lot.
Yeah, you know, but I don't know. I just felt like something was missing. I don't know what it was. Like, you know, I don't, even though I was feeling fulfilled on some level, I don't know, just something was missing. And number two, you know, scaling a media company is tough, you know, and trying to find like, you know, good ways to monetize is kind of tough too. So we were running into some issues on, you know, how do we, you know, grow at that scale, right? But as we kind of started researching our data and everything, we noticed that a lot of our Asian-centric content was doing well. So this is like 2 years in. And we just decided to try to do a little bit more of it. So every time we featured an Asian entrepreneur or, you know, an Asian face that just so happened to be successful, we just noticed like an uptick in engagement. And it was weird because like I wasn't trying to do it on purpose. It was just like, hey, you know, these guys just happen to be Asian, and
It kind of goes back to your roots with the other Asians. Like
Yeah.
I think it just tied to what you were saying earlier about like I was missing something, and now it's all connecting. Not only is it beneficial in the business sense, but it means something to you.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I never thought that. I mean, the reason why the other Asians kind of fizzled out was because we didn't think we could really build a business out of this. I mean, you know, I thought that my kind of contribution back to the Asian American community would be, you know, when I become like hopefully immensely successful, and then I can give it back in my own way, whether it's like a nonprofit, and so, you know, basically be put in a position where I can just give back. I don't have to think about like ROI, return, or whatever it is. I just wanted to, you know, do what I wanted to do, right? Yeah, so. And I was getting DMs at that time too of people going, hey, like, thank you so much for featuring Asian faces. You know, we don't really, you know, get that recognition in the business world, so thank you. And I was actually really surprised by it. And so I was like, wow. You know, so I started looking deeper into it. We started showcasing more Asian faces. Next thing you know, we started building a bigger audience in the Asian American space. And what happened was we kept doing more of it. We started expanding to different verticals like food, like social justice. And next thing you know, like, you know, in about less than a year, we became like probably one of the leading, you know, voices, publications for Asian Americans. So
Sick. Congrats.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
You guys should do weather in all the Chinatowns. The news section: Chinatown, Dallas, Chinatown, Miami.
we were actually thinking about like weather, you know, we were thinking about, hey, we should do like a weather channel. It's kind of like, hey, like, you know, today it's going to be, you know, cold, so better, you know, go to your nearest pho restaurant or something, you know, like little references. We were just thinking, random ideas.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess back to this question.
High school to
then is-
college thing?
Yeah, as a high school senior, you know, if you wanted to go to college and study, like, did you already know what you wanted to do?
Did you grow up in SoCal?
I grew up in NorCal.
So you're just already smarter than us.
No, not even. No, you know what? Like, it was crazy. I had the most stereotypical like conservative Asian upbringing. Like literally, like when I grew up, like my mom was like, oh, he's gonna be the best doctor, literally the best doctor, lawyer ever. And you know, they thought that I was gonna make strides in academics, be a professor of some sort. And then I think when I got to kindergarten, they realized that they had to set the bar way lower.
Kindergarten?
It was so bad.
Were
Like,
you eating crayons? Like, what the fuck was it?
So let me tell you this. Okay, and literally like at the end of the year, like the report card, the bar had been set so low for me that at the end of the year, like the additional comment part was like, you know, Benny has really made progress. He now knows that when the teacher is talking, he shouldn't be making weird noises and talking and like bothering people around him.
You were like
and
4 or 5.
That's tight.
he also know like, and you know, even like during spelling tests, like I didn't know that I was supposed to, you know, you go to your own corners and you would just, you know, you're supposed to listen to the teacher, right? I would take it and I would start drawing on my own spelling test.
I get it now.
You know, I know, right? And so yeah, the bar was really low. And
It's a sign of an entrepreneur, though.
yeah, exactly. You know, so literally every year, you know, in school up until middle school was the same exact conversation during parent-teacher conference. And it would just be like, okay, I think, you know, Benny's really struggling. I think that we're going to have to hold him back a grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like that was like, it was serious at the time. And so, you know, I got tested for ADHD early on, which my parents never, you know, casually didn't really mention to me. They just said I was lazy and not like focused or whatever it is.
So you did test it? Like
I did have ADHD. I had to take like, you know, additional courses. Like, you know,
Did they medicate you?
no,
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
not at all.
That fucks up so many kids.
Yeah. That's what I'm grateful for in a sense is that, you know, because like now that I get older and everything too, and you know, you hear about all these things about like medication and what it could do to kids. I'm like, oh, like damn, this is wild.
Yeah.
You know,
So how do your parents feel about you now?
it's interesting. I think that they didn't really know what I was doing until like very recently. So
No.
yeah, it was kind of like Forbes 30 under 30 list. Even at 2018, my mom was all like, "Oh yeah, cool." But then she didn't even know what, you know, how big of a deal it was until
She doesn't know what Forbes
Yeah,
is.
she's in a Forbes.
when her friends. Oh, she kind of knew it, but she wasn't sure how big of a deal it was. Oh, did Forbes just mention you?
She
Or
like,
are
if
you,
my
like-
friends talk about it, it's huge.
And her friends started talking to her about it, and that's when it started like really clicking for her. And then when local Chinese news started talking about it, then it really started kicking. And so
The Chinese is more important than Forbes.
yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, the Chinese, you know.
The Daily Fortune cookie says.
It's like your parents.
Yeah.
It really didn't matter what the rest of the world was saying about it. It was like until it was in their like little circle. That's when it was like, okay.
Yeah,
My son
So
made it.
wild.
so wild now. And so it was just like, and you know what was crazy too is that, you know, my mom, you know how like Asian parents, they like compare each other, like totally, that was totally like that for my mom. It would seriously be like literally like I've heard stories like my mom telling me, oh hey, like this person's parent like grabbed your, you know, schedule from me and was like, let's see how many AP tests your son has this year. And it was just like, damn, okay.
Weird.
Yeah, so little things like that. And I even remember like, and I think my dad told me something before I graduated college, right? Like I remember, I don't know if it was some sort of an event or like maybe friends getting together, but like it was basically all the moms getting together and they were like, oh, you know, celebrating, you know, all their kids getting into Ivy Leagues and my mom having the only person whose son didn't get into an Ivy League.
How much do they have? How much do you have? Right?
True.
And the funny thing is now, like some of those exact same people that are kind of
They work for you.
They reach out to my mom now to try to like, you know, talk to me or, you know, or like oh hey, can you help my son or certain things. So I was like, how the tables have turned.
Yeah, they
basically.
peaked too early. That's why.
Or they're miserable because they never found out who they were. Because their parents set a track for them and they just had to follow it.
Yeah.
So it's not really.
They're too busy
blossoming into
spelling
who
in
they
the
are.
corner
Yeah.
instead of drawing.
So I was late to the show, so at least like, you know, there's some level of proudness coming from her now. So, you know, yeah.
You know what I realized is that maybe I'm just attracting a lot of ADHD people because like birds of a feather, but I've noticed that a lot of people who are like tremendously successful or whatever, they do fall under that category. And it's the ability to think outside the box. And like, I feel like pretty soon we're gonna figure out a way to identify it quicker and help those with that same condition to get to a place like in a healthy way, right? Instead of like we have mass education and everyone's kind of like in this factory and it's like, hey, you're defected, but it doesn't work like that. It's really like we're different chess pieces, and it's like, why are you trying to make this fucking rook act like a knight, bitch?
I think
Deep.
it's interesting because like I think in school, like, you know, you're always like, people always teach you things, but no one ever teaches you how to learn, you know?
Well, they're idiots. It's idiots teaching idiots, really. Like, damn, these people, sometimes they don't know how to teach because no one taught them how to teach really good.
Yeah, and it's tough, you know. That's a whole nother conversation with resources giving to teachers and all. That's a whole separate, like, you know, monster that needs to be tackled on, you know. But yeah.
That's true. All right, next question is, what will your advice be to someone who wants to start a business but is too deep in school debt?
Wow. That's a tough one. I think that
Suck a lot of dick.
oh man, honestly, you know, it's tough. I mean, this hustle is really, really tough. I mean, even for me, like, you know, I had like bad business dealings like in the past, like after college, you know, I've been in debt before. I've had, you know, and I've had to pay that off. And, you know, for me, I think that, I think I took it upon myself first. Like when I did have debt, I took it upon myself to try to get out of debt as soon as possible. And I think that, you know, I had a plan for myself to, you know, whatever it was, like, you know, working jobs, as many jobs as I could to make money. I mean, in college, I worked 4 jobs at once, at the same time. Seriously, like, you know, I mean, you know, all at once, just so that I can hopefully be a little bit more financially independent, don't have to depend on the parents as much. So I always had that mindset of just like trying to hustle, and, you know, any way that I could, you know, make money, like I'm gonna do it, right? And so I think that my advice would really just be, you know, if you want to start a business, start the business, but do whatever you can do to, you know, chip that, you know, balance down as much as you can. And honestly, there's no real easy way to approach it. I mean, I wish there was, but, you know, come on, I was pulling like, you know, more than 80-hour weeks, you know, if after, you know, honestly, like after, you know, my day job at the time, you know, after college, I was still like grinding it out at night, sometimes working until like 2, 3 a.m. And so it was nonstop for me.
How long do you think that grind was for?
Man, I think that in some cases I'm still grinding even today, but I think that it's a different grind, you know.
Yeah.
At that point, you're kind of like trying to establish yourself. You're trying to, you know, you're a nobody. So, you know, you don't have the right contacts. You know, you don't have the right resources yet. So, you know, what I'm trying to do is how do I make myself as useful as possible to, you know, whatever, you know, that could be, right? And, you know, I was always on my computer thinking of new ideas. I was always like, you know, trying to find little scheming ways to make money through internet marketing. I was always trying to land another client to, you know, help manage their social media or whatever that is. You know, I think that, you know, man, like it's like when I look back nowadays, like seeing the amount of stuff that I did, I mean, crap, like I sometimes I surprise myself. I'm like, damn, like working so many, you know, spending so many hours on the grind without any sort of guarantee of what the next day could look like.
Did you pay your debt first, or did you?
I paid off everything,
and then you started a business.
Yeah, I paid off everything first, and then I started a business. I got out of debt like within 2 years, and everything. And so like, but you know that it was hard work, man. You know, and I think
the ability to go through that is like an important filter to being a successful entrepreneur, though.
You gotta pay your debt.
You gotta be able to like, if I think like for people that are like, for someone that's asking that question, like if you're already in debt, how do I get into more debt and do whatever? Like it takes someone that can get out of double debt and see that vision and push forward and go through all kinds of shit to be able to play in a realm where you're like net positive, you know?
I'm always in debt and always out of debt. How about that? I paid my debt. Well, I started JK first, and then I got in debt, and then I paid it off, and then I went full-time JK. So that's another way too. You can part-time the business until you pay off the debt.
you know who that reminds me of?
Huh.
Donald Trump. You know, he's like billionaires, and you know
He was bankrupt like 8 times
so
and
many
shit.
times and stuff, man. You know, hey, people play that game already. It's okay.
I feel like with entrepreneurship, that's the thing. It's such a blank canvas that there's no right or wrong way. It's the right way is if it worked for you.
Yeah.
Cause like it's kind of like, what do you call it? The survival's bias, right? Like if we make it, it's like, of course we think that's the answer, but then we'll find another example in the business world where it's like, no, I kept my debt, but I went balls out with my business, accrued more debt. Like Kevin James from Jerky Boys movie and all that, right? Like he maxed out all of his fucking credit cards to go balls out for his movie, and then it worked.
Yeah.
But like, how many other people do that and it didn't work?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, you only really hear the headlines of like, you know, the good news. And, you know, the reality is, I mean, I've heard figures when I was covering startups and entrepreneurship. I mean, I've heard like figures from like, if you start a startup, you have between 75% chance and 95% chance of failure.
Yeah.
You know, you think about that. You know, and so I feel like it's one of those things where, you know, when you look at building companies, when you look at building startups and everything, I look at it in an analogy where you kind of have a general feeling of where you want to go, but you don't really know the exact direction you want to go. So you kind of just have to pick one and just start going. But you have to be, you know, be okay enough to pivot and change directions as soon as possible while still cutting your losses. And I think that, you know, most people, like, you know, they pursue something, and then if it doesn't work out, they kind of give up, or like they have like, you know, like bad feelings about it, and you know, they're like, oh yeah, you know, this is not for me. But
Or they're stuck and they don't even pick anything. They can't. They're just like, I don't even know if it's A or B, and I'm just gonna stay here the whole time.
A lot of people, I
yeah.
didn't even realize they don't even have dreams in the first place, so they can't even choose the direction that they go. And now that blew my mind, because I was like, I thought everyone just had something, but they were afraid to chase it. But there's a whole group of people.
Yeah, I'm in that second group,
Yeah.
and that's harder.
I think that's that's
knowing.
hard. Not
So
knowing
much
what you want,
harder.
and then picking what you want, and then being afraid to pursue it. That's the next stage. Pursuing it and not knowing if you can make it. That's the next stage. Doing it, getting paid from it, but not making a mark. That's the next stage. And then I think there's a couple of levels in progression of career.
True.
I gotta admit something then after
What?
that. So, you know, it's interesting because I've reached, I guess you could say, some level of success of some sort. I think that there's always
Bro,
this
you're on
rhetoric.
fucking 30 for 30. That's successful, bro. Like, it's okay.
Forbes is like, yeah, 30 under 30.
You've made it, bro.
They don't even know who the fuck I am.
It's okay. You have a lot of fans. Don't worry, Bart. I mean, I think that you know, yeah, people assume that, oh, you know, he's have it all figured out, and I think that people always like throw this around. It's like, oh, if you want to be successful, you got to find your passion, and you got to find your passion. And I'll admit it right here. I mean, I don't know if Next Shark and what I do here is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Do I enjoy the work that I do, and do I enjoy, you know, what I'm giving back to the community? 1,000%. You know, but there's still there is that question looming over my head. It's like, you know, what is it that I really want to do when all is said and done? You know, if like money wasn't an issue, if I didn't have to worry about like the stresses of the world, what is that? And I'm honestly still on that journey. You know, how do I want to give back? What do I think I want my legacy to be? So I think that the message that I would say is that, you know, like life is that journey, right? And sometimes like knowing where you want to go is that process of self-discovery, and that process of self-discovery could take many, many, many years and decades. And I think that it's important to not be stressed out if you're not there yet. I think that it's more important to kind of remember you know, that journey of where that beautiful journey of getting to that destination. I still remember the day that I made the Forbes 30 under 30 list. Yeah, I jumped up and down. I was super happy, you know, for about a good 10 minutes. But then after that, like the rest of the day was just me thinking about, oh man, like, you know, all those years of working hard and you know, and not being recognized for your work, and you know, thinking about quitting pretty much like every other week of some sort, and to now, like, you know, that's really what you know, remained in my head after all that time.
It's crazy. So like for people that have a passion, right, and they hit their trials and tribulations, right, you know, they'll like fall back on, oh, this is my passion, and that's kind of like what they dig deep for to further them in their cause, right? So for you, you're saying like not necessarily Next Shark is your passion, but when you do hit those trials and tribulations with Next Shark, where do you dig deep down, and where do you find that motivation to keep pushing forward?
It's a great question.
Man, I think that I always look at life in terms of moving is better than not moving. And I think that I think that for me, like my therapy, when I go through those times, I like to kind of do research. I research on, you know, different entrepreneurs that have gone through a lot of trials and tribulations. I look at, you know, companies that, you know, were on the brink of failure that have come back from it. And I analyze it, you know, really deeply. And I also, you know, and I find solace in it to kind of see like, hey, you know, it's possible. This can happen. And so as long as I know that there is a chance I could turn this around, I'm going to take that chance, as small as it is.
That's the entrepreneur mind.
Yeah.
You know, that's the difference. I think how I can identify who's gonna make it as an entrepreneur or not is when they see successful people, they see those examples, and then they go, oh, awesome. They made it out of this shitty family, and they have this story of struggle, and then they freaking made it. Perfect. That means I can do it. Versus someone else that sees that and they go, oh, but like, that's like a 2% chance. I'm not gonna do it. And then they don't see that as hope. They actually see that as like the opposite of hope, of like, yo, you have to do that much? Like, oh, I don't know. Like, I don't think I can stomach that. So I'm like, they're not.
Like discouraging instead of motivating?
Yeah, or they blame or make excuses of why. Oh, it's because, you know, this person's like rich already, or they came from this, or they'll find some other thing, right? And then I'm like, so there's a difference in psychology behind someone that's like, oh, I got a 2% chance, fuck yeah! Versus someone that's like, I have a 98% chance to fail, fuck that. But I do have entrepreneurial friends that do think more cynical. And it's so weird, right? Because I'm like, they're cynical in a lot of ways, but they still go, oh, my probability is high. I could do it. If that guy's an idiot, I can do it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's two types of entrepreneurs, I think. I think there's a type that just love the game of money. Like, they're serial entrepreneurs and they only looking at the numbers, kind of like I put X into it and this is what I get back,
It's like just like chip stacking at a poker table.
Yep.
Yeah. And I respect that if that is the way they want to go, I totally respect it. I think my focus is that, I mean, of course, like the money aspect is great. I mean, who doesn't want to, be financially successful and have like that independence? But I think for me is that, I think that I'm more focused on, figuring out how I could utilize my skills in business and everything to, create a product that could, make the community better in some way. And I don't exactly know what that is. I think that, we're kind of in an era where it's like a lot of business that I see coming out of Silicon Valley and a lot of the business that I see, I feel like it's a lot of it's more like, how do you get more and more people addicted to this one thing? There isn't, I don't really see too many things about like how can you advance society? In some ways. I mean, even like, let's say tech, how could tech have a positive influence in society? We were talking about, I was talking about an idea with some friends about like, hey, like, we could maybe create apps to, maybe pair like volunteers with elderly people who need help and stuff like that. Like there's so many different aspects that you could utilize tech for good and utilize business for good. And, for me in life, I'm always trying to find that equilibrium. I don't know what that equilibrium is, where it's like, I can win and everybody else around me can win. That's kind of like my mantra of how I, view building my companies.
That's dope. Everyone wins.
Yeah, I try to. I mean, I don't know like if some people call me naive for thinking that way, but I prefer to. I'm more of an idealist.
Show them the cover of like 30 under 30. That's all you got to say.
I want to be on 30 over 30, maybe.
Hey, you still got 40 on the Fortune 40 on the 40, man.
I think that
Oh, yeah.
Hit me up, Forbes.
the entrepreneurial person is someone who's a problem solver, though. So, like, regardless if you're just a shark that's trying to win the game of hacking the system and making shit ton of dollars, there's also the ones that are like, yo, there's a problem in the society. I'm gonna use business as a way to solve it.
To each his own.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.